Well, folks, unfortunately, football is a long, long, long way off for Miami fans. Welcome into our latest edition of Hurricanes Live right here at the Voice of College Football, courtesy the Wholesome One. Uh, and we wanted to, of course, preview the Sun Bowl matchup against Washington State, but it was not to be. Wholesome One, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well, man. I wish we would have been able to sit down and break it down. The funny part is I had already done a film review and everything was ready to roll, but it is what it is. We keep rolling and we roll with the punches. It's unfortunate. And last night we did an individual send off to every senior, and I spoke about what they've meant to me over their time because this is the class that was the class I got started with in YouTube in 2018. So I was able
Good
to see
point.
them from their high school film and all the way through their film, the ups and downs, the different coaches, and this they would have had three coaches if you want to add Coach Christopher on over 5 years, and that's a lot. We've had three different offensive coordinators and multiple defensive coordinators, multiple position coaches. So it was real nice to just go down the list and just tell them how much it meant to me personally to cover them and the honor of seeing them wear the orange and green and play with the level of intensity that a lot of them did. And it may not have ended the way that they thought, as far as no national championships, no ACC championships, but grateful for the experience for them. And a lot of them have degrees, and that's a blessing in of itself. So I was happy to be able to talk about that.
So that sounds like some worthwhile time spent. So Miami fans, head on over to the Wholesome Ones channel and check out what he posted in regards to his take on each one of the outgoing seniors and NFL draft eligible players that will have worn the Miami football uniform for the last time, and his thoughts on each one of their contributions. So that sounds like a great take.
Oh
So
yeah,
yeah, we
oh
would have
yeah.
seen the Sun Bowl against Washington State. Now Central Michigan is heading that way. Their game against Boise State has been canceled. Their bowl game, which I can't remember the names of all these obscure bowl games, but whichever bowl game they were supposed to play in Arizona against Boise State opted out. So now Central Michigan's been diverted from their bowl game to take on Washington State. So their game plans are, of course, changing as we speak. But for Miami, there's a football game of interest coming up in a couple days between Oklahoma and Oregon for no other reason necessarily than the Oregon ties with Mario Cristobal and them getting their responsibilities out of the way and completed before we possibly could see some more uh, transfers of sorts, not necessarily players, talking about coaching staff coming from Oregon.
Yes. So starting out with, of course, you have Alex Mirabal, best friend to Coach Mario Cristobal. Alex Mirabal is 5'5", and he played center at Columbus High School. Okay, and he's really skinny now. I don't know if he's always been like that, but he is an offensive line coach, assistant head coach. He's the right hand man to Coach Cristobal, and they work together on that offensive line, and they help it work together as a unit. So excited to see him come. And man, I've been watching a whole bunch of his film, and I think he has a great viewpoint on offensive line, Mark. Because one thing about it is when you have the size and you have that ability, you got to be able to teach them that technique, and you got to have educators. Someone that can be able to just not only convey that message, because it does nothing for me to have all the knowledge. I have to be able to have the young men know what they need to do and execute that. And to hear those kind of things coming from these coaches is stuff that we haven't heard from our coaches in years past. So I'm just excited to see the different quality of program we're going to see under them, especially on the offensive line. Defensive line, Coach Salavea, Polynesian brethren, former Arizona All-American, former Redskin or Washington football team member, former Baltimore Raven, Now going to the coaching ranks, been on the defensive line. He started off as one of the best defensive line coaches in the country. He's a massive man himself. All right, so he has a connection to a whole bunch of our Canes. Played with Sean Taylor and Shantana Moss and Clinton Portis and Ed Reed and Ray Lewis. So he has a love for that U, and we're excited to see what he can bring to the table. Been checking up on him, and you know, for a lot of people, man, once you guys find their names up, you can YouTube them, and there's all these links and mic'd up and things that you can go and watch and basically listen to what you're gonna get. Now it's an older, a younger version of them, an older video, and they're growing over time. So we're excited about it. For me, Mark, the fronts is where it starts. And for those two signees, those two people to agree to be Miami Hurricanes coaches, it's very important to me because we need to beef up and we need to change the fronts if we want to ever be in the conversation again as a top five program. I understand having the speedy wide receivers, having the good cornerbacks, having a solid running back, having a good free and strong safety. But if your front seven is not up to par, when you line up with someone who's is, it doesn't work out well for you for the most part. Also, you got Coach McClendon, the wide receivers coach and passing game coordinator, who is the head coach right now for Oregon. Okay, so all three of them will be coming over from Oregon. And again, Coach Cristobal is built 100% on respect. He wants them to be able to finish their priorities with Oregon, and then once that's done, then come on down and be a part of the family here at Miami. But make sure that we finish what we start. And so those are the three coaches that we'll be taking on as far as on the field football coaches that will be taken from Oregon. The fourth coach from Oregon is Aaron Field, strength and conditioning coach. He's also thought of as one of the best strength and conditioning coaches. Now, he is the head strength and conditioning coach. He has seven other people, Mark, seven other people that work with him. Two of them are from nutrition. Two of them are track coaches that work with him. And the other three, including him, are strength staff. And that, among anything, is probably number one. Besides the head coach, your strength and conditioning and nutrition program is 1B. And if that isn't up to snuff, if that is not up to par, it's not going to get you anywhere. You won't be able to hang. Okay, if you don't have the NFL caliber bodies, because some people hate when I say SEC bodies, so I'll say NFL bodies. If you don't have the right body fat percentages, if you're not able to pull that kind of intensity out of your players, because they have something that's unique, Mark. They have something that's called the 4-quarter strength and conditioning program. So they split each semester into two separate 8-week increments, and that's where you get your breakdowns on. So, for example, sometimes you get, because 16 weeks is a full semester, so you split them in half, 8, 8. And when you have the 8, at the end of that first one, the first quarter, just is similar to 4 quarters in a football game. So at the end of that, you're going to do your 40-yard dash test. You're going to do your max on your bench, your max on your squat, and that's how they go about measuring you through all the way through the off season going into your full season. So I'm pretty excited to see. It's really unique. I had to look it up. It's something I never heard of, but it was really nice to see. And heck, if we start having our players look and play similar to the way what was going on at Oregon, I think we'll be just fine in the ACC.
I was smirking because I was looking for comments while you were running down the Oregon coaches that look like they're headed to Miami. I was running through the comments that have been made to the various videos that we produced here over the past week, and one particular gentleman. I want to get his name on here for the record. It's funny how critical people can be. So Ryan Bauer. So Ryan is so I don't know if it was you or if it was Cam, and it really doesn't matter because we were going through Mario Cristobal's national championships. We were working through the years he was at Miami.
That was me and you. That was last
Yeah.
week, Tuesday.
And then we
Yeah.
were counting through the national championships, and it just took us a second to be like, okay, 87. We were just counting the national championships. So this knucklehead writes, he writes, if you don't, if you can't name the 5 years we won rings, you lose any and all credibility to talk about Canes football. That is downright embarrassing. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I
If
mean,
so,
you're right. I messed up on that one.
no,
I
no, 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 no,
honestly,
no,
I
no,
was
no,
tough on myself with that one,
no,
Mark.
no,
I
no,
was
no,
like,
no, 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 no.
ah.
No, 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 no. So if anybody wants to try talking about a particular team or all of college football all the time, every day, and talk about it constantly, if you want to take that on and you want to be held to the standard of always knowing every answer at the drop of a hat to perfection all the time, then you take on that challenge and you can go ahead and try it, because there's nobody online, there's nobody on television, there's that knows everything. And even if you know everything or know that particular topic, you may misspeak. I don't know how many times I'll say somebody's name wrong, and I know exactly who I'm talking about. I've watched them play 50 times. I just said their name wrong. I inserted a Mike for a Mark or whatever. I just said it incorrectly that one time, and that doesn't mean I don't know who I'm talking about, because we all do it. So my response was, I know more about Miami football history than 99% of the people you'll find online or watch on TV. Please go watch them. So, all right. So anyway,
Yeah, it just it's weird. It's weird. I will say I definitely thought about that afterward. And I was like, God, I kind of dropped the ball on that one, but it
no, no, no,
happens.
no, no,
We
no, no.
we we have so much that goes on. We have so much in our minds, and when stuff just gets thrown at you, you got to just keep going. And hey, we fumbled it on that one, and it still doesn't explain the fact that people were counting his national championships as a coach, and it threw me off completely when they added the 2015 Alabama, and I was like, what is that? Okay, it threw me off a little bit, but we're all good, man. We're good.
Got all sorts of people chiming in as a part of hashtag Live Squad. Appreciate everybody being here. Appreciate you, Graham. Thank you so much for that. So, man, can you really grasp and think about it and absorb it that we're not going to see this football team on the field until the first Saturday of next September? It's a
It's
long off
mind blowing.
season.
It's mind blowing, Mark. It feels like man. To be honest with you, Mark, it feels like we've been in the off season for years at Miami. Because it feels like the season's over by week 5 for us
Yeah.
all the time. As 2020, we were pretty excited throughout, and we had some drop balls and things didn't go our way, but we had some excitement there. You had the Louisville national televised game. We embarrassed them. We destroyed Tallahassee. We're kind of building up there. We were on the same field with Clemson for a bit there, so it felt like we could be in conversation for a little bit. And then we got skull drug by UNC, and life hit us in the face pretty fast. It happens. Okay. But all that hype, all this offseason hype, all the offseason talk, blah, 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 blah. And we get there, and by week 3, it was like, all right, well, when is he going to get fired? What we're going to do now? Now we're already projected into the future because we had to go from De'Aaron King to a freshman. And now we're talking about how the freshmen are going to be so much better than the seniors, instead of being able to appreciate what the seniors have done because they haven't gotten any better. It was always looking ahead, looking ahead, looking ahead, instead of being able to appreciate the moment and what's happening right now because the moment has been so painful. And for someone who's covered it, it feels like we're in the off season 80% of the time. And 80% of the year is the off season, but it feels like more like 90 when you're a Miami fan, or you cover this team because Mark, we're on our fourth coach in 6 years. It just a third. Yeah, Mark Rick in 2016, and then Manny 19, and Coach Cristobal in 21. So in 10 years, so it's 2021 right now. 2011 was the ending of Al Golden. So in this decade alone, Miami has had four coaches. You go back a couple months before that, when you add in Randy Shannon at the end of 2010, that's five coaches in 11 years. Okay, because we have continued to try to find the right fix, and I'm hoping that for the first time in my time of covering the Canes, studying the Canes, and really observing and knowing what I'm looking at here, that things are going to just be done in the right way and we can trust it. We don't have to beat our head against the wall about who the offensive coordinator is or who the defensive coordinator is and who can come be the savior of the U, when we can say, no, we have an administration that's investing millions. We have a head coach who understands how to get it done. We can sit back and, of course, talk about it, but we don't have to try to fix it and save it and be the ones who drop that gem that they were like, you know what? We probably should give Rhett Lashley a chance. He is a good OC. And then they finally come, and you're hoping that he saves Miami before he darts off for his next head coaching job. Okay, we can finally trust and appreciate our head coach and what he brings to the table. And we will know that he's going to do his due diligence to make sure that these hires are the right ones, not just people he knows from Oregon, not just Miami alum, or not just people with South Florida ties. He's going to make the right hire for the betterment of our program.
Have we heard anything from Mario since his introductory news conference? I know that's only been a couple of weeks ago, but I just didn't know if he had met with the media or if anything had been posted since then, just talking about the recruiting class, talking about anything else with the off season.
Oh, yes. He was there, was it last week or a week and a half ago? He had his first presser when he was talking about the signing day and the original signing day on the 15th, I believe. So a week and a half ago, he was able to sit up there, and you can hear in his voice the excitement because he's talking about being able to have the guys that we all signed, helping them get early enrolled. So, correction, last time we were here, talked about the fact that only one of them was an early enrollee, and that was Nicely Kelly. Come to find out, they're working on about 3 to 5 of the 9 to help them get in and working with their local high schools, the public ones, because the private ones usually already have stuff in place. It's not really much you can do when it comes to private schools. I can only speak for South Florida private schools. A lot of them do not allow you to early enroll. That's just how it is. But the public schools, Coach Cristobal and our recruiting staff and has been working with their high school coaches to get them to speed up that process to see if we can get a couple more guys like a Wesley Bassett, a smaller inside linebacker, to get into this winter strength and conditioning program. Okay. Wide receivers, Horton out of Tennessee, just trying to get them down here to get them into our strength and conditioning program and get things rolling in that way. So that was one of the things he spoke about at his presser. He also talked about the excitement of matching up Nigel Lee Kelly with one or two other big time guys on the front. You can take that how you as it may. He could be talking about Cyrus Moss. He could be talking about Shamar Stewart. He could be talking about both of them. Who knows? Who knows? And when it comes to this particular situation, as far as recruiting for Miami right now, you have to just kind of take it as a grain of salt, and hopefully things work out, because anything we get this cycle, Mark, is more than it's truly just a blessing, because we haven't been able to get a position coach for a lot of these guys. We haven't been able to have sit down conversations with them, a part of our full staff, and meet up with their advisor and things of that nature, and get things rolling and truly recruit these young men. So the beautiful part is him having them push theirs until February means that a lot of these young men are trying to give Coach Cristobal a chance to recruit them, and that's all you can ask for at this level. It's an opportunity.
There's a question about offensive lineman Dave Luley. I don't know if you've
Uh-huh.
heard of him, the Oregon commit. He committed to the Ducks back midsummer. Obviously, that has ties to Mario Cristobal, finalist Cal, LSU, Oklahoma, Oregon State, Tennessee. But as of now, he's apparently still committed to Oregon.
Yes, so there's been talks about him on the decommitment trail. He's a massive human being. I think he's about 6'6", about 330. He's huge. Okay. Another reason why we wanted to bring in Coach Salavea is the best way to recruit a Polynesian is to have one on your staff. And once you get a couple of them to start coming in and trusting your area and falling in love with your area, then you're able to build a nice community. Because I tell a story when I was at Mayville State, Mark, listen, we signed one. John, what's John's last name? Not Tagovailoa, Talavea, John Talavea. Signed one of them, Mark, within 8 weeks. It was 15 Polynesians that moved in. They had one at the high school level, then a bunch of the cousins and sisters and aunties. They all moved from Hawaii to Mayville, North Dakota, because they wanted to be around their nephew or their son. So and then it became a nice little pipeline of a couple of them signing to our school and things of that nature. So it was really cool. And I loved it because I have a connection with them. And it's a nice thing. So in recruiting, on the offensive and defensive line, some of the best prospects are Polynesian descent prospects. And yes, they're on the West Coast because the islands are a lot closer to that area. But Miami is similar to a Southern California. It's similar to the way that we carry ourselves as a more of a Caribbean area. It's very similar to a Polynesian or Samoan island. So I think it would be great to have that connection to be able to recruit those kinds of players. And it's not just O line, D line. You got linebacker prospects. You got some safety prospects. So it's once you get that pipeline going, man, it's different, Mark. It's different. Like Coach Cristobal says, that you is different. It's different.
Talking Miami football every Tuesday, 1:15 Eastern Time with the Wholesome One right here at the Voice of College Football. We ask that you'd like the video, take the link, share it out on social media, Twitter, Facebook, elsewhere. So grab the link, share it out on social media. Let people know that we're here talking Miami every Tuesday at 1:15 Eastern Time with the Wholesome One. And, of course, head on over to the Wholesome One's channel, Wholesome One Holloway, right here on YouTube. It's a pretty simple statement to make, but I was just looking forward to watching Tyler Van Dyke sling the football around 30 or 40 times again against Washington State. And with Charleston Rambo not playing in the game, it would have given more opportunities for him to continue to develop the rapport and the chemistry with the rest of the young wide receiver core that's going to come back with him next season.
Yep, you got Romello Brinson, Jacoby George, Brashard Smith, guys like that. I tell you this, Mark, I think it was the best decision, though, because last time I sat in this chair, and at this exact time last week, we spoke about the fact that Miami had not had one of those 16 bowl game practices yet. So I was hoping that maybe we figure it out here soon, because the game was next Friday, which would have been this upcoming Friday, and Miami had not had an organized practice yet. How are we going to go out here and try to play a bowl game when a couple of the players, names not announced, tested positive, and then they were around another group of players so that they were around them, so that means they can't play either. We haven't had an organized practice yet. More than half the staff has accepted jobs at other places. Okay, the guy who was going to be our offense coordinator already took the offense coordinator job at SMU, and it has been there out at SMU working out with Rambo. And Rob Likens is who I'm talking about. Rob Likens took the job at SMU as his offensive coordinator and passing game coordinator, associate head coach. He was supposed to be our offensive coordinator for this bowl game, and he hadn't been on campus at Miami in weeks. So what were we gonna do? So us stepping away, not taking it, the best thing that could happen. Now, unfortunately, Coach Cristobal was going to use this bowl game practice to be able to evaluate our roster. You know, what's going on here? What do you bring to the table? Yeah, you're 6'4", or you're 6'5", or you look nice. How do you play football? This is going to be an opportunity to see them move and how they quick twitch and open field tackle and catch the football and block and all that kind of stuff. Also help game prep. His team beat Washington State to help them, help Miami go out here and win this game. But we weren't able to do anything for the last 2 weeks due to our COVID protocols and lack thereof. And the fact that our players, whether they be vaxxed or not, it just didn't work out. And, a game was taken away from our young men because of what's happening. So it's a very sad situation, but for the future and moving forward, it is probably the best thing that could have happened because now we don't have to add another L to the column because we didn't just go out there and say we're the mighty Hurricanes. It's going to go out there and kick your butt. And we haven't practiced. We're not organized. We don't know who's calling plays. We don't know who's going to be the offensive coordinator. A couple of majority of the offensive staff is already gone and taking jobs. So again, it sounds like I'm making excuses, but these are all facts, guys. It made no sense for us to step into that bowl game against Washington State, a team that's well ready to go. None of their coaches are gone. Their seniors are ready to go and get our butts kicked just to get our butts kicked. It just would have made no sense. Would have made no sense whatsoever.
They had to go through their own transition about halfway through the season when their head coach was let go due to vaccination protocol, and that tore up their coaching staff, and they recovered rather well. But here they are 7-8 weeks later, having solidified that situation and been comfortable with their staff. And obviously those guys picked up the pieces well and carried on a successful football season that went 7-5. On the other hand, you would have Mario and others that could contribute to a game plan since they saw this team firsthand and played them at Oregon this season.
Absolutely. So, Mark, let me ask you this. This was brought up to my attention by Coach Cristobal. What do you think about this way of doing things? So, Coach Cristobal was going to evaluate, like I just said, the players, but he also was going to give them an opportunity to meet with him. And if he felt like they had no home here or they weren't going to be able to play or contribute, that it would be best for them to go ahead and hit the portal now so that they could find a place for spring ball, get in and get acclimated there. Now that has to be pushed back to us having spring with them. And then there's a chance that they could still be told to seek shelter elsewhere and then have to go and try to fight for a spot somewhere as a senior or junior with only 2 years left over the summer. Do you think that's the right way to go about it?
Well, I do think that Mario can't make a determination on these players if he's going to just base it on a clean slate and his own evaluation. He could always sit down with a game tape and watch everything that happened this past season. But for those guys that didn't see the field much, then he's got nothing to go on. But if that particular player feels as though, based on the way they were coached and played under the prior regime, that and then looking around that particular positional unit and thinking I don't really stack up too well based on my own observation, based on my own evaluation, and being honest with myself, I don't think I really stack up against the rest of the group of whatever position unit is, linebackers. I just don't think I'm there, and maybe transferring to a group of 5 or somewhere else is going to serve me well because I want to play football. But other than that, for those players that think that they can compete at that level and maybe just didn't think that they fit well under the previous coaching staff or weren't given the fair shake and want to see that, then, we saw a huge influx of players into the transfer portal right at the end of spring practice last year, which makes total sense because players got to see, okay, I can see the writing on the wall. I didn't have a good spring practice, or I met with my position coach afterwards and he was honest with me and said, hey, you're the fifth corner or whatever. And so I'm making a decision. So based on the amount of traffic we've seen in the transfer portal since then, I would think at the conclusion of this spring practice this year, it's going to be even more busy.
Well, I think the reason why I asked that question, because to me it's the right move, because you're gonna have to
Absolutely.
revamp. You're gonna have to revamp this roster. It
Yeah.
is what it is, and the best way to revamp this roster is a mixture of the portal and recruiting. Okay, a nice blueprint. I'm not saying we have to exactly do this because to take 40 brand new players is a bit much. But Michigan State was able to go out there and have the season they did because he completely revamped that roster. I mean, it looked nothing like the roster that was there 2 months previous to that. That's how fast nope, 40 new guys, a couple 21 new freshmen, 40 transfers, just a complete whoop, everything. Get this out of here. Meet with the young man. Hey, listen, unfortunately, I don't think that you're not going to be able to play here. I would love for you to go and find a home somewhere we can help you as best as we can. But the portal, you'll be able to communicate directly with coaches on your own. You can move on. I think that's the best way to do it because we're going to have to need a new roster, man. We can't have, again, Mark, I've said for years, I think our starting 22, 11 on each side, pretty solid. Good enough to win the Coastal, good enough to be in conversation for the ACC at least. You start getting the 33s and 44s and 55s and 66s. You start talking about guys that would be backups at FAU. Talking about guys that probably could start at Charleston Southern maybe. That was where we were starting to drift into with a couple of our scholarships that we were handing out. And again, it's not about being disrespectful to these young men. It's just calling a spade a spade. All right. It's not their fault that the University of Miami came and offered them a full-ride scholarship and they accepted it. I mean, why wouldn't you? If you know you're like a three-star guy and Miami's offering me, I would take it. No problem, no questions asked. But with the Miami that's elite, it wouldn't be that high. Okay, it wouldn't be that high. Wouldn't be that high a percentage of guys who you can argue shouldn't even have scholarships. That's really bad. And another thing Coach Cristobal talked about is not taking guys just to take numbers. That's not the right way to do it while we have a portal right here. I can take 9 or 15 high school guys and then have them on the back burner for a bit if need be, if they're good enough to win out the battles, so they can go out there. But I could go to the portal and get a guard who has experience who couldn't crack the depth chart at Kentucky or couldn't crack the depth chart at Auburn. So he's in the portal, and I can bring him down here, and he can contribute for us a little bit here, whether it be just a practice body or whether it be a rotational guy, as opposed to taking a three-star who will never play or never start here and just have him come and be a practice dummy. There's just no need to do that.
So when you talk about the third line on the depth chart, the fourth line, the fifth line, as you just did, you don't think that you would have that same evaluation of the players at North Carolina or Virginia Tech when looking at their third or fourth line on the depth chart?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Like that,
And
of course.
Not that they should be the standard because you want to pass them by, but right now that's who you're competing against to win the Coastal.
Right. And you're right. I mean, of course, it's not like I always tell people, it's not NCAA where you're going to be the number one recruiting class 16 seasons in a row and you got nothing but 5 stars on your roster. I'm not saying that, but you talk about the elite of the elite. Cam Kitchens only gets reps running down on special teams because he can't get on the football field on true starting downs. James Williams is a rotational guy because he's a 5-star, but he's making his runs going down as the gunner on punt because that's where he makes his bread and butter. You talk about a guy like Reuben Foster at Alabama, 5-star, number one inside linebacker in the country. He was running down on special teams for 2 whole years before he took a real start in defensive snap for Alabama as a true junior. Okay, that's Alabama. But what's another school that people would get? Let's look at Florida this year with a guy who could have came here and been a starter, but went there was a rotational guy, Jason Marshall. Why? Because they have 5-star defensive backs or big-time defensive backs on their team. So he was a rotational guy and a special teams guy. So I'm not necessarily saying that we have to be perfect all the time and have this super stacked roster. What I'm illustrating to is your top at least 44. So 44 would be the 2 deep on each side. They need to be blue chip ratio recruits or higher. So 4 stars or higher, in my opinion, if you want to be in the dance or part of the 14 playoff or the 18 playoff or the 12 team, whatever we go on to be. Okay. You want to be in that kind of conversation? Yeah, you're too deep on both sides. Needs to be blue chip guys. Because if not, you're not going to be able to compete with the guys who do have those kind of things.
According to the 247 composite, so they put together a total team rankings list. So basically, you can go to any year, and so this football season is 2021. So you go to 2021, and it will show you not just the recruiting class for 2021. It will show you the roster for every team in college football and what that roster composition looks like in regards to 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars, the average talent ranking. So it basically gives you a rundown from 1 to 130 of the most talented teams in the country. If you just believe in the recruiting rankings, which we've had this conversation a million times, the recruiting rankings are valid. Are they perfect?
Right.
No, they're not perfect. They're valid. They're obviously valid.
Yeah.
So Miami, according to this, has the 13th most talented roster in the country. So that should have played better than 7-5, especially against their schedule. They weren't playing in the SEC. They weren't playing in the Big Ten. They should have done so much better than 7-5 with the 13th most talented roster in the country.
It's sad. And that's what I tell people. You look at our roster, and like I say that we need to revamp it. But what I mean by revamp is have the tough conversation with guys who are not 2021 caliber Miami players. What I mean by that is a slow inside linebacker who can't cover, a defensive tackle who, no matter how much we really work on him, has a ceiling that still probably won't ever be a starter here. And we're gonna end up out recruiting and over recruiting this person, doing them a due diligence because then they're going to be a redshirt senior here and they're still a rotational guy. Why? Let's not do that. Have the guards and tackles who haven't taken this program serious, who have been around since 2016, 2017, who don't play, they don't care to play, they don't care to make their times, they're just here to go through life, wear the uniform, and get a free scholarship. We need to get them out the program. Cornerbacks who are project players who aren't going to play here, get them out. Wide receivers who continue to get hurt, have them sit and have that conversation with them and say, listen, you want to play, you want to contribute, go somewhere else. That's what I mean. Because for you to say that, that means we're probably in that top 30 to 40 range of blue chip people. Maybe we have anywhere from 30 to 40 blue chip prospects on our team right now to be the 13th ranked team, somewhere in there. Couple borderlines, but for the most part, we got some in there. And then I tell you this, the other thing, Mark, is having a fair system. You got a 5-star top 10 player in the country and Leonard Taylor on your team, and the guy gets 5 snaps a game. Come on, man. Come on. That just doesn't make any sense.
And he was showing something in those 5 snaps.
Man, go out there.
I'm just watching the game against Virginia. I think that's the first time he got any kind of reasonable time on the field against Virginia. And I'm not even looking for him. I'm just watching the game. And all of a sudden I see Leonard Taylor like smashing down guards and getting into the backfield. And I'm like, okay, I I see him, and I've known about him obviously, but I recognize that he's in the game.
Yeah, and you wonder why you don't see him again until the next game, second quarter. And it's like, what are we doing here? And the whole thought process of you got to earn your stripes here.
Well, it looked like he was earning them in the little bit of time that he got.
You would think, huh? You would think. Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking at these rankings. There are 3 schools in the country that have more than 10 5-stars on their roster. They're pretty easy to guess. Georgia's got 19, Ohio State 16, Alabama 14.
Georgia has 19 5-stars on their
19
team.
5-stars. Ohio State's got 16 and Alabama's got 14. They're the only teams above 10.
I think we only have 2. James Williams and Leonard Taylor.
Yep. And then you also see the 4-star ratio is not that far off from an Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, and Miami, but it is. There's a gap there. And then it would be interesting to know. We'd have to dive into the average ranking and all that business because the 4-star category takes you from about the 40th best player in the country to about 450. So that's a pretty good span of play.
So it's a huge. Yeah, you're right. 4-star recruits is pretty big.
You know, you could be basically a 5-star, or you could be still a good prospect, obviously, right, but not, you know, another 400, 450 spots down from that. So I'm guessing, I think it's pretty easy to see Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, et cetera, that their 4-stars are way up the list.
I was wondering why Oklahoma wouldn't have more than, because when Lincoln Riley was there, I would expect them to have more than 10 5-stars.
7. And again, I just think it's pretty definitive that the college football playoff, there's basically been 6 schools that have played in the college football playoff. When you really look at it, that have done anything, even Oklahoma, they haven't played well, but they've shown up 4 times. So in the team total rankings, Alabama's 1, Georgia's 2, Ohio State's 3, Clemson 4, LSU 5, Oklahoma 6. And that's pretty much been your college football playoff.
That's simple. Which I don't. I've always had that discussion about the expansion. Dude, it's mind blowing to me. I think the 4 is cool. I was the 6 for a while, but I understand why it gets a little iffy. So 8 is okay. But now you got people talking about like 16 and 32 and 64, and I'm like, oh,
well,
God,
yeah.
It's just, again, maybe my mind isn't just open enough to it. Maybe I don't. It just doesn't make much sense to me. I don't believe there's a need to go that far, but that's just me.
Yeah, I would like to see it expanded to 8. If you look at the matchups for 16, if you're just a college football fan and you want to see good teams play, it right, looks great. And I've worked on 16-team playoffs, and do I want to see Auburn and Oklahoma play and North Carolina and Penn State play and all these good teams play. Sure, I would love to see more good football teams play, but then you're really looking at a situation where you got to size down the season because you can't have these student athletes playing 17 games and all that other business. So it's more complicated than just we're not playing a video game. We're playing with real human beings.
I wonder how long they'll be listed as student athletes, though, Mark. With the way things are
True.
going, and I'm for the NIL. I mean, or name it NIL. I always get that one mixed up with your national level intent and a lie. I get those two mixed up, but I'm for them being paid. I think it's cool. I think it's exciting. We're in the infant stage of it, but I don't think it's been that wild. Texas paying people, their parents' salary is ridiculous, but that's just me. Then we got to figure out somebody to come in and regulate this because if they're going to start the market at 100K, you best believe Georgia and Bama and LSU are going to hop right over top of them at about 200K. And then it just turns into a free for all if we don't have a committee or whatever, just come to an agreement on how to cap it and keep it within reason. Because it could turn into just like the people who want 64 team playoffs. It could turn into madness if it's not regulated.
Absolutely. We had somebody in here asking, why does D2 and D3 have a playoff and D1 does not have a playoff? Well, there's a lot of politics involved in that from the D1 side of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a financial thing. It's a finance thing. It's interesting you say that because I was having a conversation yesterday about the FCS level and how the HBCUs are listed under the exact same FCS Division One AA program, but they don't get invited to the big playoff system. And the person I was talking to was completely mind blown at that. Like, no, they make it. I'm like, no. Because he thinks that HBCU ball is like its own thing. I was like, no. They are FCS. They're all together. It's just they don't get invited to the playoff system. So that was interesting to educate him on that.
How does that make
And
any sense?
isn't that crazy? So this year, Florida A&M was the first team since 2016 to make the FCS playoffs.
So I don't know anything about the FCS playoffs other than, turning the games on, watching guys play in the snow, and they're fun games. But I don't follow the games. I just don't have time during the year, the structure, or anything. So there's a 16-team playoff. How are those teams determined?
Well, it's based off the top 16 in the ranking system.
So who's voting on this?
They have a committee similar to.
So they have some kind of committee that's ranking the teams.
Right.
So the HBCU teams don't rank that high? Do they play games against the other FCS teams in the regular season?
Yep, they do. The crazy part is Jackson State.
Yeah.
Deion Sanders' team was ranked in the top 15 all year long.
Yeah.
And didn't make the playoffs. Their only loss was to UL Monroe, who isn't an FCS program. And they didn't make it. Florida A&M, the team that they did beat, the team that made it, their loss was to Jackson State, who was ranked ahead of them the entire time. But Florida A&M made it to the 16-team playoff bracket.
So I'm looking at Jackson State's schedule, and unless I'm missing something, they're playing all HBCU teams. Florida A&M, Tennessee State, Louisiana Monroe would be the exception. Okay, Delta
State. That's
what I
said. UL Monroe was their only loss.
Yeah. Delta State, Alabama A&M, Alabama State, Bethune-Cookman, Mississippi Valley State, Texas Southern, Alcorn State, Prairie View.
Yeah.
So it sounds like I don't know what their conference looks like. They went 8-0 in the conference, and they went 11-2. So that's 13. That's 5 games they played outside their conference, but they were still playing other HBCU teams. I'm speaking out of ignorance, but just based on that little sample, it sounds like they need to be. Hate to use
Now,
the
that's what I said.
word that we should have been using 50 years ago, but they should integrate these schedules, these teams.
Now, one thing I will say is if you go in a different direction and you say, okay, if we can't make the FCS, then give us a HBCU the
Yeah.
bracket and give us this exact same time with 16 teams in the bracket of HBCU. Give us an HBCU national championship game, and you could televise that on a NFL Network, who are the people who sponsor the HBCU football. It's NFL Network, so I think that would be perfect. I don't necessarily see nothing too bad about doing it in that way. Um, in my opinion, that'll be cool. But I don't know how we got into this, but yeah, that was something I wanted to put out there.
So there are 128 FCS football programs, and you're telling me that includes the HBCUs.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Yep.
that's pretty much the size of the FBS, almost exactly, but they have a 16-team playoff. I would love to see a 16-team playoff. I actually would. But I'm not going to hammer my fist for it. I don't think it's necessary. I think 8 is necessary because I want to see all the conferences, all the major conferences represented. Now, if you're going to go to 16, there's kind of 2 radically different ways to do it. One would honor the schedules of the best teams, and you would have a lot of wild cards from the Power 5. The really radical way to do it would include all 10 conference champions and really get the group of 5 involved. But again, you'd have to look at schedules and reduce the regular season.
I think there's so many ways to get this thing done right that if we would have used 2020 in a proper way, which meant we had more time on our hands, sit down, and because I think there's billions of dollars to be made in this way. We did, I mean, look, a bunch of the conference expansion is happening because of what they sat down and did in 2020. But if they were to sit down in that offseason in 2020 and figure out how to make this right, let's sit down, let's get in these Zoom meetings. You ain't even got to do it in person. Sit down and have Zooms, let's cross examine all this stuff. Let's put it together, man, because I think it could be so much better if it was done the right way, in my opinion. If they were able to say, all right, let's put what's a big time? Sam Houston State, who's moving up to the American Conference. They got the bump up. All right, cool. Now, why is it that the group of 5 doesn't have a championship? In my opinion, I look at it like, hey, if the Power 5 gets a champion, then I think the group of 5 decides should have an opportunity. Now, you could do either FCS and group of 5 together and have them go against each other. That'd be pretty cool. You want to go that route. But it's multiple ways of turning it into more excitement in college football, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm not going to go through my complete plan, but I'll just say these 3 things. One would be, number 1, I think scheduling needs to be addressed because the schedule produces the teams that qualify for the playoff, meaning that if the schedule's not fair, if it's not equitable, then you have all these imbalances and all these discrepancies in schedule. And the schedule is one of the major contributors to determine who the best teams in the country are. So scheduling needs to be fixed, both conference and out of conference scheduling. And then secondly, I think a decision needs to be made about the group of 5. What you just alluded to is the group of 5 going to be formally part of the playoffs or not? Either separate them or include them. One or the other.
Pick one.
Don't just kind of
Yeah,
make it
pick one. Yeah.
wishy-washy. Just whatever the committee decides that particular year, which was to never include them up until this year when they pretty much were forced to.
Right.
Now they know they're out,
Right.
and then we can go from there.
Right.
I
Because I
think it
mean,
needs to at least be 8. I'm good with 8
yeah, eight
myself.
works for me. And you say that's the group of five, a power five, excuse me. Then the group of five, I think, how many group of five teams are there, Mark, off the top? Do you
Well,
know
if
off
we're
the
going to
top of your head?
separate it, it's almost split down the middle. It's about 65-65.
They could get an 8-team playoff of themselves, and they go from there. That way, every level would have a champion. You got a group of five champion, you got a FBS champion, Power Five champion, you have a FCS champion, you have an HBCU champion. That way, each person it's equity, not equality. Each person has an opportunity to win their conferences at that particular level, battle it out for a championship, and then have a championship. That would be the perfect opportunity.
And what you're suggesting there, this might be the time to do it with Cincinnati, BYU, Houston, and Central Florida going to the Big 12, because I think if we were having the same conversation like 2 years ago, the UCFs and the Cincinnatis of the world would be saying, hey, we want to compete for the national championship
Right.
in the Power Five, even though we're a group of 5. That's what we're aspiring for. Well, they've already taken that step and been included now in the Big 12 going forward. So I think you still would have those people and maybe those institutions like a Boise State that would be maybe reluctant. I'm just guessing because they consider themselves such a high level group of 5 that they want to be included in consideration, even though they're
Right.
not getting to the playoff now.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, only one team. I like having this conversation too. I don't know if you got to go, so I'll be respectful of your
Yeah, here
time.
in a
But
minute or
uh,
two.
one of the other things that I like to have conversations on is we've gotten to a point in college football where the only thing that's respected is are the champions. It's the only person that's respected. You go out and win a Rose Bowl, you lost 2 games, 2 or 3 games, you won your conference, you missed the playoffs, you won the Rose Bowl. You're not a champion. We've gotten to that point in college football where the only team that gets the tip of the cap, the respect, is the champion hoisting the national championship. Well, I remember when even for me, and I'm a young guy, 25, I'm still young, but bowl games used to mean something. Like
Oh,
players were overly excited about winning a bowl game.
oh man.
Winning the Sugar Bowl had prestige to it.
Oh,
Winning the Orange Bowl had prestige to it. Now it's like, if I'm not the college football national champion, I'm nothing. And I don't think that that's the right way to go about it,
I
in
don't
my
think it
opinion.
is either. And I don't know how to change that.
Mm-mm.
But yeah,
I don't think
you
it's
know,
a perfect route, but
you're talking to somebody who grew up in Ohio, in Big Ten country, and that Rose Bowl was everything.
yeah,
Get to
yeah,
the Rose Bowl, win the Big Ten, get to the Rose Bowl, and then oh yeah, there's a vote, and we might finish number 5 or number 7 or whatever. But and it's nice if you get voted number 1 and you're the national champion. But it seems ridiculous now. But we used to go to bed on New Year's night, not knowing who won the national championship. We had no idea.
yeah.
Now, we could pretty much guess, they were number 1 before, they probably or number 1 lost to number 3, but most of the time it was kinda like, well, it could be Auburn, it could be USC, or it could be Miami, we don't know.
Could be a
Uh,
split. Yeah,
yeah, it could
no.
be split,
And
and
I'm not
we
saying we got
didn't
to
know
go back
until
to
we got
that.
the paper the next day.
Right. And I'm not saying we got to go back to that. I'm just saying, a lot of the people in our fan base bash Mario for saying that he had the most talented team in the Pac 12 and he won the Pac 12 but never made the playoffs. And I'm like, well, what are you complaining about? We would take that at Miami in a heartbeat. We would take 3 ACC championships and 2 Orange Bowls at Miami
Yeah.
and never make the playoffs. That's a great thing. That's good. What they did last year's Texas A&M team, who played North Carolina in our home stadium in the Orange Bowl, a big time game. that was a great game, and that was a great end to the season for the Texas A&M team. They were able to carry that off into having a pretty solid season this year. You know, Florida winning the Peach Bowl, and then also winning they went back there in the Orange Bowl the
They
next
won the
season. You
Orange
know,
Bowl. Yeah.
that's good. But we've gotten to the point in college ball where it's like, no, either you're Bama or you're not,
Yeah.
basically. And you know, it's not Nick Saban's fault, but it's Nick Saban's fault. You know, he's
Well,
done a
yeah,
great job.
playoffs fault.
Yeah,
I know because I talked to tons of Ohio State fans. They're not really that interested in going to the Rose Bowl. That
right.
seems just insane to me. But
Well,
it's you got to win a national championship or they're not happy. So that's where we are.
all right. Well, Mark, it's always a pleasure. I'm always loving the opportunity to come here weekly. It's a blessing to have this show with you once a week. Not too many people are blessed with a spot every single week in a time slot, and I'm one of the few. And I truly appreciate you, and thank you for the opportunity. It's always good to come and talk about my Canes and to be here amongst family and talking about the U. And hopefully, next time we get this conversation next week, Tuesday, we'll be able to have our staff in place and bowl games will be done and even be able to have our national championship pick and things of that nature. So we'll be able to have a little fun next week. This week is a little gap week. There was a lot of filler, but it was a great show nonetheless. So I appreciate it, Mark. Thank you.
Absolutely. Wholesome One Holloway right here on YouTube. Get on over there, check out his work. All right, Wholesome One, Happy New Year. We'll see you in 22.